Sometimes you leap up out of your comfort zone into the unfamiliar, into an unknown and uncertain space. And then while you're in that space, you anchor yourself to something that feels good and familiar and relatable and comfortable. And yet, I am just now thinking and reflecting on when you're in that familiar, comfortable space, how do you then expand again out to the unfamiliar and the uncomfortable so that you continue to grow? This is the space that I am in currently. This is something that I'm thinking about currently. And so let's talk about it because I'm I'm actually ruminating on this and working this out in real time with you. So let's do it. Let's bring our collective experiences, understandings, thoughts on this, right? So it's kind of like if you take a leap and you got a big promotion, or you leave your career for another career and you're newer in this career even though it's been a lifelong dream of yours. And so you've left out into an uncomfortable space, and then you're kind of maybe you're a little awkward girl, a little awkward guy, and you meet somebody that's like awkward like you, and you guys get it and you're vibing, and then that's your person and there's nobody else in the peripheral, in your periphery, in that space that you're even looking to connect with, because you found your person and that's it, and it's comfortable, it's familiar, and you get it and you get each other, and that's enough. I am a firm believer in the fact that our growth comes with some discomfort. Our growth and our development as people comes with being in unfamiliar spaces. I heard something recently that said there's nothing that's hard. It's just either familiar or unfamiliar. And if you tell yourself it's hard, then it is hard. But if it's just unfamiliar, it's something that you can familiarize yourself with. And that was very comforting, because when you are in an unfamiliar space, it's true. Once you familiarize yourself with that more, you ultimately get more comfortable. Things ultimately become a little bit easier. You figure out how things work, how to move, when to stick, when to bob, when to weave. You figure all of that out. And I'm in a space where I took a big leap. I took a leap. Okay. I left everything in the States. We sold our house. We were like, this is the life we want to live. Okay. So let's live it. Let's do it. And my family and I moved abroad, and our kids just trust us. So we have them with us, and they trusted us enough to be on this journey with us. Right. And so great. Awesome. And then I get into this space because we get here, it's unfamiliar. We have to learn how things work here. We have to figure out just logistics of day-to-day life, how to move, where to walk, where to be, where not to be, all that. And yeah, I found myself, and I talked about this on the channel before, in a beautiful space and privilege and blessing to meet other people who also move their families here, right? From the US, from Canada. And there is a comfort in that, and there's a familiarity in that, because we speak the same language, sure. And also because we've had very similar experiences. Everybody's experience is different. And yet, and still, we understand what it means to be somewhere, let that go, and then come to live someplace else with your family. And that puts us all in kind of a similar club with similar conversation. We took that leap. Now, my family took the leap. I say it's a leap because people usually get a little wide-eyed, and maybe you will too, when I say, like, yeah, we moved here without ever having visited here. They're like, that's when they start to be like, that's bold. I hear bold, they say bold, but I think they're also like, what? That's insane. That's nuts. That's crazy. I get it, but that was the leap. And yet, coming here, I have settled in some familiar spaces. And there is nothing wrong with that. Let me be clear. Let me not be misunderstood. I think that that is a good thing, to be able to anchor to something that feels good and feels familiar and feels relatable. You get each other, all of that. And how do we expand so that we can still grow? How do I expand so that I can still grow? When I did my first video ever on YouTube, that was for YouTube and part of this 100 days of daily posting journey that I'm currently on YouTube, I talked about the fact that it was titled like, I won't feel bad about moving abroad or something like that. But I talked about my why, and my personal why. One of my big personal whys in this situation was to push myself out of my comfort zone, to challenge myself and to grow. It was personal development was a huge part of my why. And that is going to mean some discomfort and not always being in a space of in a familiar, comfortable space. And yet, I feel very comfortable. The people that I've met feel like home. They feel like home, even though I never met them before. They don't necessarily. Well, that's not true. A few of them came from Atlanta, so so I've and I've met a New Yorker since I've been here too. But similar experiences and just mindset about things, like we're aligned on a lot of things. When you get in a space, we're like, oh, I found my people, and that's great. And in my head, when I came, I was like, oh, I'm gonna also meet locals and build connection. I have met locals, but I haven't been in spaces where I'm really building connection. And another layer of a video that I did in the past has come to light, because I talked about the fact that the language barrier wasn't as huge a barrier as I thought for many reasons. However, when I think about fostering relationship and connection in the way that I think of connection and relationship, right? Being able to converse about deep things, going beyond, small talk, because what are we doing? you know, um, really being able to get into it, that requires some language. There is a challenge there when there is a language barrier. And I wonder if that, and I'm like, that's probably a part of why I don't necessarily have a lot of local connections. I met someone, I remember early on, maybe like 4 weeks in or something, at the grocery store, or we were at some store. She was super nice. She helped me with something. She was working on her English, and I was working on my Spanish. We talked about it, and she was like, she was like, if you just moved here, if you call me, we could do a play at the park. I reached out to her a couple times. I didn't hear anything back. And I reached out to her in Spanish, right? So I used my best Spanish to figure out how to write something. It's kind of helpful to write it because then I can kind of edit it and figure it out, put it in a translator app to make sure that hopefully nothing is too lost in translation and I can communicate exactly what it is that I'm trying to say. And yet I didn't hear back. And I wasn't salty. It was just everybody has their life, everybody has things going on. She has her, kids as well. I have mine. I'm in a new space. I'm figuring things out. And so I was like, okay, I get it. But I was excited, like, oh, I'm gonna have a local friend, we're gonna grab coffee or take the kids to the park. And I was definitely in a space where I was open and willing to work more on my Spanish in that relationship. And I still, in the back of my head now, in hindsight, wonder, how deep can I get if I can't express myself deeply, if I literally do not have the words to do it. But that doesn't mean that I can't foster connection. So that might have just been me limiting, but these are real thoughts that came in my head. But since then, I haven't really made like local connections in that way. I am open to looking for a improv class because I've always wanted to take an improv class. And I'm like, if the improv class is entirely in Spanish, that's going to be challenging for me too. And it also might impede on the experience that everyone else there is having, because I guess I can always play the foreigner who doesn't speak Spanish that well, like who isn't fluent. I can have some basic conversation. I can get around. I can, talk to people, like, get to know them conversation. Talk about who I am and what I like and what I do. I have some words for that. And yet, I'm like, am I going to mess up their experience because I don't speak Spanish fluently? That's not my native language. Are we going to be able to enjoy the experience together? Am I making too much am I overcomplicating this? These are the thoughts that are in my head. Because I told you guys I wanted to get more into the creative scene as well. So I'm just in that space where I took a leap, did something, and jumped into the unknown and the unfamiliar. And I've also anchored myself to the things that feel good and feel familiar and feel like home, in the form of people, in the form of, even supermarkets we go to where we can get some of the things, not all of them, okay? But some of the things that we get in the States that we enjoy, there's all of those little comforts. Again, nothing wrong with it. And yet, I'm figuring out how I expand. And I'm wondering if language is part of my limiting belief in that. And I think that it is. I think that's where it becomes more of a barrier. In the day to day, I can get around. I can order. I can order from, any shop, coffee shop, wherever I step into. I can go to the bank. I can go to the supermarket and have that. I can have conversations with new people and have an initial converse about whatever it is that they're saying, especially if it's present. I'm talking about my past a lot. I'm like, oh, I gotta work on my past tense. Okay. That's what I have these tutors for, so I can fill in some gaps for myself. But I can do that. But on a deeper level, I don't know. If I'm going to a creative class and everything's in Spanish and I don't understand, like in an improv class, I'd have to be an interesting character. Like, it's the one that's figuring it out. I have to be a little bit me with a twist because that would be challenging. And so, yeah, I'm sharing how will I step out into the unfamiliar a little bit more? How will I move into a space where I have to grow because this is where I am. It's funny because my daughter has these opportunities to be in spaces where they predominantly speak Spanish or only speak Spanish. For school is both, but um, there's an art class that I want her to take that's going to be predominantly in Spanish. The swim class, I believe, is all in Spanish. Now, swim is very demonstrative, right? So this is do this, arms up. All you can kind of figure it out because the teaching of that is very demonstrative. And same thing with the art. It's very, make a stroke like this, right? If they're speaking in Spanish. And she'll have a friend in that class who's bilingual who can help her out if there's gaps that need to be filled in. But I want to encourage her to listen in. And that is outside of her comfort zone, for real, for real. She's not feeling very comfortable with that idea, even though she wants to take the classes. And I'm like, okay, I will mess up and still talk to anybody around wherever I go in my neighborhood or even outside of my neighborhood in Spanish. I know it's a little broken Spanish. I know I probably missed an article or I used the wrong tense, but they understand and they help me, and I'm not afraid to make mistakes. And yet I haven't put myself in a predominantly Spanish speaking situation. How does that feel? How would that feel? I don't know. Um, and I think that is the next thing that I'm going to need to discover and figure out. I went to a documentary a few weeks into being here, and the documentary was in Spanish with English subtitles. Then they had a panel afterward, and everybody was speaking Spanish. And I picked up what I could, and I listened, and I got the gist and the feel and the passion, even though I didn't fully understand it. I don't want to limit myself. When I think about the improv class, I'm like, maybe I could be, someone who doesn't speak, can gesture, for whatever reason. I have a backstory about that. Maybe it's like Raj on Big Bang Theory, and he could only talk to women when he had alcohol. Other than that, he was like very facially expressive and using gestures. Again, I do wonder what that would do for other people's experience. Because if I don't understand what you're saying, the idea is that I'm reacting to what it is that you're saying. So if I don't know what that is, if there's something missing in translation, what does that look like? Maybe I need to work my way up to that. So where's the middle ground? I don't know. I don't have answers for this because I decided to ruminate on this in real time as something that just kind of downloaded for me. I feel comfortable. Ain't nothing wrong with that. But I want to get a little uncomfortable. Because why else am I here? Like, well, there's many reasons, but growth, personal development, seeing what I'm made of, understanding what I'm capable of, those are all part of that. And I won't know that until certain limits are tested. I won't know how resilient I can be until I'm faced with a situation where I need to be resilient or resourceful or creative in a different way than I have been. So stay tuned. I would love to hear if there were moments for you where you felt like you were maybe complacent, you felt like you were comfortable, and yet you were longing for more. You wanted to see what else is out there. And it could be a little nerve wracking, like it is for me. As the questions that I'm asking, this was a lot of questions asking for me, and perhaps questions asking for you. And yeah, you might have some insight into what that looks like. I definitely know my feelings around it are valid, but my thoughts around it, it's like ping pong, right? And at some point, just like with moving abroad, you just gotta take the leap. You just gotta do the thing. So I just gotta sign up for the thing, go to the thing. Uh, you know, when I see people just reach out, exchange numbers, and actually, just because that person we didn't get to from the supermarket didn't have that conversation outside of that moment, doesn't mean that's going to be the situation with everyone that I meet. If I feel any vibe, hey, let's meet up for coffee. I don't drink coffee, but tea or coffee, or let's link up at this bowling alley, or let's link up and have some dessert, or whatever. Let's take our kids to the park. Something. So, yeah, shout out to all of us who are figuring it out, who are leaning in to expand our horizons and figure out, what is truly possible for us in a more full way, and see what we're made of out here in these streets. Thank you for listening to this rumination. I look forward to hearing your thoughts down below in the comments. If you like this video, hey, give it a thumbs up. And if this is kind of your jam, I mean, this is unusual today because I'm figuring it out with you in real time. And perhaps another video later down the line, I'll be like, haha, this is what I've done. So make sure you stay tuned and follow me on the journey. If that's something that you want to do, make sure that you hit subscribe, because this is your vibe, and continue this journey with me. Thank you again for listening. I appreciate your time, your listening ear, and I will see you tomorrow.